49ers Ultimate Report. This is John Jay, your 49ers reporter, opinionist, analyst, and die-hard fan. Welcome to another episode of the 49ers Ultimate Report featuring the Candlestick Point Report, one of my featured podcasts on this channel. You know who's on this podcast. There's no more need for introduction. Let's just bring in my boy Shifty. What is up, man? How are you doing?
I'm good, man. It's a beautiful day in the city. You know, the whole roster's been announced. A lot of good moves, a lot to talk about, which I'm super excited to jump into.
Yep. Just about 48 hours ago, the 49ers officially had their 53-man roster. Yesterday, we found out the practice squad players. And we're going to look at the roster and look at some of the players that the 49ers did lose on waivers. And that's what we're going to be talking about in today's show. But before we jump into the show, we're going to jump into the comments because we got a lot to talk about. So let's see who's in the chat. Of course, you know this guy. You saw him yesterday. It's our boy Bryant. He's the OG.
Good to see you, man.
Yep, OG. Shout out to my boy Bryant. He says, "What's up, faithful?" And what is up, Bryant? We got my boy Blaze in the building. He's not always in the building, but when he's in the building, what is up, Blaze? Thanks for tuning in as always. You must be a very busy man because, again, when I do see you, it's always a great honor to see all these great 49er fans, especially the fans of my show. I know who all they are. They always support the channel, even if they're only here once a month or every single day or even twice in one single day when I do 2 live streams like I had to do yesterday. But shout out to my boy Blaze. He's in the building. Of course, Crazy Juice is in the house. He's always in the building on every podcast. What is up, Crazy Juice? He says, "Sup, John Jay and Shifty. How are you doing?" My boy, Crazy Juice. And again, Crazy Juice lives in Southern California, you know, that LA area. But there are no Rams fans out there. You heard that, Rudy. You heard that. Hope you heard that, Rudy. I want you to hear that, Rudy. Okay. Oh man! But shout out to Rudy. I like the dude. Good dude. Crazy Juice also says. Also, I don't know what Lynch sees in Dante Johnson. What is he back?
Practice squad.
Back? Okay, he's the gift. He's the gift that should not be given. No, Johnson, get the hell out of here. One of the final Harbaugh holdovers, man. And looks like nobody wants them, so that's like, let's just bring them back in. Because, oh, man.
On the practice squad, I don't mind.
So, speaking of that, we're going to jump into the practice squad. And again, we have a lot to talk about, so we are not really doing our usual introductions. And again, we're going to start off with the practice squad, and we're going to look at the 53-man roster. We're going to give our opinions about, you know, this roster. It's been 2 days now, so there's been enough time to look at the roster. Yesterday, the 49ers did cut Trey Sermon, so the running back room got a bit smaller. So I was right. They're going to keep 4 running backs, but the only reason why that happened was they brought in a guard. So I want to get your thoughts on the practice squad, Shifty. What are your thoughts when you look at the practice squad? Were there some players that you were excited that they came back? And were there some players that were picked up by other teams that you're a little bit, you know, saddened to see when it comes to this practice squad room? So when you look at this practice squad room, just give me your overall thoughts. You know, how good is it? And, of course, the players, you know, that you wish did not have to go. But, again, it's part of the NFL business. So what are your thoughts about the practice squad?
Well, you know, we do have the best player in the NFL in Dante Johnson on the practice squad. So, but seriously, I think there's a lot of really talented players here. So that's really good. So like the name that I think sticks out to a lot of people is probably Komoko Turay. I know a lot of Niner fans were not super happy when we ended up releasing him, but thankfully he's back. I'm kind of shocked that he didn't go anywhere, like no other team wanted him. So that definitely worked out for us. The other big move with regards to like the rookies, 2 undrafted guys stick out. So when you have Jason Poe coming back, and I did read I think it was from today maybe, that John Lynch was saying that he was like really worried that a team would pick up Jason Poe. So very happy that he's back. And then also Quantrez Knight. So he's someone who's definitely impressed a lot during training camp, during preseason. And then we have some really solid safeties too. I think Tashawn Gibson, I wouldn't be surprised if he's on the 53-man roster week 1, simply because we only have 3 safeties there right now. So, and then Taylor Hawkins, a guy who had an interception in preseason and looked pretty good. So there's a lot of like really solid players all around. Another guy who doesn't really get talked about, Akeem Spence on the defensive line. I think he's a really solid player. I thought he played really well against Houston preseason week 3.
All right, yeah. I am looking at the 53-man roster, and of course, just like you said, the great Dante Johnson is back on the team. But for whatever the reason, joking aside, besides that because that's just, I don't know why, but I'm going to digress and just continue on talking about the practice squad. So there's some players, again, let's just forget Dante Johnson. Alex Barrett, I don't know why they brought him back. He's only known for one thing, sacking Kyler Murray in that Week 16 game against the Cardinals. So that's basically all he's known. Tayshaun Gibson could be elevated because Jimmy Ward is on IR for the next 4 weeks. Alfredo Gutierrez, they released him. He's returned. So again, he has basically, they still have an extra space in the practice squad if they have not hit the 16 mark. Taylor Hawkins, Quinn. That's a difficult name. Quantrez Knight. There you go. Cornerback. I like that. Continue to add depth in the cornerback room. Tay Martin. Not too familiar about him. He is a wide receiver. McClary Ball, when he was cut, I was angry. I thought he was going to be picked up because he had a good preseason, good training camp. Jason Poe, glad he came back. We do need a lot of guard help. Willie Snead, don't know why we brought him back. Akeem Spence, we do need defensive tackles because I think we only have 3 defensive tackles, so we have another defensive tackle in case one of these players does go down. Sutherland, I don't even know what to say about this. He should not be on the practice squad. And then we talked about Komoko Turay and Malik Turner. We also picked up Blake Lynch. Don't really know a lot about him. Only know from the Vikings. So when I look at this, there are some players that should not be on the squad. But when I look at this, I'm glad that Komoko Turay, Malik Turner returned. Of course, McClary Ball, Jason Poe, I'm glad. And then, of course, I'm glad that we brought back Alfredo Gutierrez. He's a good offensive line player. So when I look at that, the players that I wanted back have returned. Jermichael Hasty, I still think he's a good, reliable player, but he got picked up by the Jacksonville Jaguars. Nate Sudfeld went to the Lions. I never cared about Nate Sudfeld. So overall, I'm glad that we got probably 90% of the players that I wanted, but we also brought back a lot of good extra depth in that practice squad. And because the old rule used to be 7 players on the practice squad, this year they allow 16 players. And I think they started to realize they don't want to expand the 53-man roster, so they decided to expand the practice squad. So I think that's going to be a good way because, again, with that 17th game, you technically now have close to 70 players that you can use in case players go down. And the IR rule, of course, it's a 6-week process. They can be in there. Then after week 7, they're cut if they're not healthy. So that's really good. And, of course, the PUP list, which is also another great list. So the 49ers, technically, we have probably close to like 75 players, and that's good for us. So that's my thoughts on the practice squad. Any other final thoughts before we move on to the next topic?
Yeah, I think very quickly, I think that Nate Sudfeld, because he got signed or picked up by the Lions, I think that we're not on the hook for that $2 million. So that's good. I was actually really happy that Sudfeld got picked up by the Lions. And then a bit of a bummer was Tariq Castro Fields. I think he went to the Washington Commanders. It would have been nice to have been able to keep him on the practice squad. Clearly, we saw something in him when we drafted him in the 6th round. So, but hey, good luck to him.
Mm-hmm. Let's go to the comments because we got some comments. Of course, our boy David in the building. It's Niners all damn day. That's true. Shout out to my boy David out there in the great state of Utah. David is saying what's up to his boys in the chat. Just wanted to spotlight these comments quickly. We got a Cowboys fan. So you and I know that we do not like the Cowboys, but this dude, Valix Prime Sports, is the nicest guy. I've spoken to him. Good guy. He's also a Yankee fan, Cowboys fan, and I think he also likes that hockey team in New York. So he's a really good dude. He does his own thing. Mostly more of a community channel. What he does, but this guy is the nicest Cowboys fan, so he's always welcome on my channel. Has never done any trouble. Good dude. So thanks very much for tuning in. Looks like we have a Rams fan in the building. Let's see what the Rams fan says. Guy is in the building. Nice to meet you. How are the Niners stopping Van Jefferson, Tyler Higbee, or even Troy Reader on week 4? I'm going to let Shifty answer this question.
Well, hey, this Niner team is very different from the one that you saw in the NFC Championship game because we upgraded the cornerbacks big time. So Charvarius Ward, he's going to help lock down those guys. Possibly week 4, we won't have Jason Verrett, but we still have Emmanuel Mosley. We have Samuel Womack. That's a name for Rams fans to remember. Sammy Womack. He's going to be a big-time player. And then Ambry Thomas, Rams fans can't forget him. Week 18, he had the big interception that sent us to the playoffs. So, different ball game. Plus, we have the best linebacking core in the NFL. So those tight ends, watch out. Drake Jackson, that's another name. We're going to be hitting Stafford left, right, and center. He won't even have time to throw to these guys. Get out of here. I'm just kidding. Welcome to the stream. And always good chat.
I will say this. The secondary has got better. That's all I'm going to say. We've got way better than last year. Way better. So that's a good positive. All right, Crazy Juice says, I see that no one picked up Donovan West. Yep. Like, for whatever the reason, this guy was a projected 3rd-round talent at worst. And he went undrafted. The Niners pick him up. And for whatever the reason, there has to be something that teams were worried about him during the draft process. The Niners gave him an opportunity. Probably did not do enough. And for whatever the reason, no team wants him. So say something happens, he could come back to the 49ers. Again, Alfredo Gutierrez does not go with the number of practice squad players. So if they do want to bring him back, he is a center. Our centers, Brunskill and Brunskill, not long-term solutions at that position. So maybe they can develop him slowly over time if they do decide to bring him back. So we'll see what happens. But if he's not picked up when the season starts, maybe the Niners should look at maybe just bringing him back. Because, look, we bring back Dante Johnson, and Donovan West is a young prospect who has a lot to develop. Dante Johnson's been in the league now for 9 seasons, and he's not good. All right, Crazy Juice says, I don't know why Sutherland is. Yep, I agree. David says, stopping who? All right. Niners all damn day in the building. What's up, man? Thanks for tuning in. We will stop those. Nobody's easy. Only one good is Cooper, a.k.a. Jock Strap. Wow. Okay, I don't know why I read that. So that is my fault. My fault for the viewers. All right. So now we're going to basically bring up the list of the practice squad players. And we're going to look at these players that we have on the active roster. So basically, we all know the quarterback situation, Jimmy Garoppolo, Trey Lance, Brock Purdy. We understand Trey Lance is the guy. We don't really need to talk a lot about the quarterback room. But let's look at the running backs, wide receivers, tight ends, and the offensive line. So we're going to talk about the offensive first, and then we're going to bring back this list of the defense side. So the 49ers have 1 fullback, Kyle Juszczyk, and 4 running backs. He is known as TDP, the nickname, or Davis Price. Jordan Mason, glad he's back. Really, really glad. Elijah Mitchell, number one. No one is taking his number one spot. Jeff Wilson Jr. Five wide receivers, all quality wide receivers. Danny Gray, first-year player, could be, somewhat of a star in the next couple of years. He looks really good. And, of course, Ray McLeod. But you look at the three guys who were there last year: Jawan Jennings, Ayuk, Debo, and of course, and I thought we are going to keep only three. We brought back Tyler Kroft on the active roster, so we got 4 tight ends. So I don't know what that says about that, tight end room. And of course, the 49ers have 10 offensive line players, and we know Burford and Banks are first-time starters. They're going to get their first taste of starting action. Of course, Brunskill and Brendel are going to be sharing time at the center. Of course, Mike McGlinchey, and of course, of the easiest one, just because he's last does not make him least, Trent Williams. So while we look at the offensive side of this, the offensive side, I want to get your thoughts. Now we're going to talk about the active offensive side, and let's basically go back to just us, and we'll bring this list back up in a moment. But let's start off with the running back room. I want to get your thoughts about that. We looked at that room. How good is this wide receiver room, and what are your thoughts overall?
Yeah, for the running backs, I think it's a really solid room. Now, there's no household names necessarily. There's no Derrick Henry or Christian McCaffrey or players like that. But I think it's really, really good. I think Elijah Mitchell, if he can stay healthy, could potentially have a big year. Even though I do want to say that Shanahan might try and split the carries a little bit more. But we know what Jeff Wilson Jr. can do. He's very, very solid, decent receiver. And then really excited to see some of the rookies coming in. TDP, at the time I was not a fan of the pick, but he's seemingly playing pretty well. Hopefully he can turn into what the Niners wanted when they drafted him. And then Jordan Mason, I think this is the guy who a lot of people are really excited about. Could be another one of those late round, undrafted steals that we find. And he looked really good in preseason, compared to guys like Trey Sermon and whatnot, even compared to Hasty. I thought Mason was one of the best of the bunch, and he just made plays happen. So really decisive. And I think that's the big thing that separated him from Trey Sermon. Sermon never really looked comfortable what he was doing, but Mason looks really good. And then, of course, we have Juszczyk, the offensive weapon. He can do it all. And so over this room I think it's really good. Yeah, if you ask fans of other teams, they might not necessarily, they're not going to know these names. But come Sunday, when they face the 49ers, they're going to be who's this number 25 Mitchell? Who's 22 Wilson? So I think it's a really solid room, deep, and I'm happy with it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, before I give you my thoughts about it, I do want to address the Trey Sermon, this little fiasco. So last year, I was on a podcast, a group podcast, and I said Trey Sermon, after that Packers game, I said he was trash. I do want to retract one thing, is that I think after only 3 games, Trey Sermon also had a concussion the week before against the Philadelphia Eagles. I think I went a little bit too harsh, but my gut was always telling me that he was not good. Trey Sermon was not good. I'm sorry. He was a big reach. And I said this, that we traded 2 picks to move up with the Rams. If the picks of the Rams, now I don't know who the Rams drafted in those 2 selections. That should have been our selection. But the Rams got some players. And if those players do pan out, if they're on the roster for long term, and I'm not saying that they're going to be Pro Bowlers and future Hall of Famers, if they're on that team for a long period of time, they won that trade. They really did. And at the end of the day, the Trey Sermon thing is finally over. He's cut. I don't know if they're going to bring him back on the practice squad. We will wait. But if Trey Sermon does not come back, I am not going to be sad. If he does come back, I'm not going to be saddened. It just means that maybe Trey Sermon is given another opportunity. But again, the Niners, for whatever the reason, we drafted a running back this year. The same a third-round selection. So for whatever the reason, the 49ers said to Trey Sermon, we gave you all the opportunities. You never capitalized last year. This year, you look really good, but during the game action against players who are not number one guys, not the number one guys, these are the number 3, the number 4, the potential cut and practice squad players, and he couldn't even do that very well. So I wanted to say that about Trey Sermon. But when it comes to the running back, I've said this, that it was going to be Mitchell, Wilson, Davis Price, and then Jordan Mason, and of course, Kyle Juszczyk. I was right. I called it. Now, I had the orders mixed up. But basically, I got that right. So another check mark. I'm going to continue to do this during the entirety of these check marks, and I might even start posting them in my social media and in my community to have all the check marks that I've got correct. Because again, I know my stuff, and I've never been wrong ever for whatever the reason. I've been wrong on a few things, but I've never, ever had a horrible track record. So when I look at this running back room, basically Elijah Mitchell, if he stays healthy, very minimal time missed, he's 1,000-yard rusher. Jeff Wilson Jr., when this guy is healthy, if he has the production of 2020, we got a 1-2 combo. And we also have depth. We have 2 other guys that we picked up. One was an undrafted free agent. One was a drafted free agent. I'm glad at this running back room. And, of course, Kyle Juszczyk, he does it all. So good running back room. I like the running back room. If this running back room stays healthy, we're going to have the best run attack. I'm not saying we're going to be so good, but we're going to have one of the best run attacks in the NFL. Any final thoughts before we move on to the other positions?
Yeah, it's I did read it today that I guess John Lynch said that they fielded or they got a couple of calls for Trey Sermon for trades. And that was something that I had said like a little while ago, that he could be someone who gets traded. But I think what the Niners, obviously it didn't work out. So, but if he's on the practice squad, I'll be okay with it. But yeah, he just never looked comfortable here. So but I'm really happy with the running backs we do have. So.
Yeah, and I want to say this because it was exactly last week since I basically changed my new channel's direction. But we did a show last week, and you said he was a trade candidate. So basically, that's a check mark for you. So again, I wanted to point that out to give you a little bit of some little receipts for those who were like, no, we're not going to trade him. But again. And there were teams that reached out to him, but for whatever the reason, they probably didn't make good offers or they weren't very serious. So that's my thoughts about that. Crazy Juice is still talking about the Rams. The Rams are going to be scared of Talanoa Hufanga. I like Talanoa Hufanga. Blaze says he is trash. So I think Blaze agrees with me that Trey Sermon was trash, but thank you very much for that. Oh, man. All right, let's keep moving on with the show. And now we're going to talk about the wide receiver room, the tight end rooms. So, again, we have 4 tight ends and we got 5 wide receivers. Let's just jump right in. What are your thoughts about this receiving core?
I think the wide receivers, all of them are really talented guys. All of them are really young too, which is always good to have as well. So hopefully we can keep this group together for a long time. But I think the thing I like about the wide receiver room is that we have just a great balance of like everything that you need in a wide receiver room. Debo can do it all. Ayuk is like the prototypical like wide receiver that you look for. And then you have Jawan Jennings, the big physical guy who can like get yards after the catch, really good in those third down situations near the goal line. Ray McLeod, that smaller, kind of like shiftier wide receiver. And then Danny Gray, the speedster who stretches the field. So I think it's a really well-rounded wide receiver room. Wouldn't be totally shocked if at some points throughout the year, maybe we bring up Malik Turner to the active roster, maybe just because he's really good on special teams as well. But overall, wide receiver room, love it. It's really talented. It's young, and I think it's going to be really good. Now for the tight ends, I think a little bit like yourself, I was maybe surprised that we kept 4 tight ends. I maybe would have rather have kept at the expense of one of these tight ends. I maybe would have rather have kept like let's say Komoko Turay or someone else on the active roster. But look, we know George Kittle, best all-around tight end in the game. Ross Dwelley, he's someone who I think the Niners really value him because he can play that Kyle Juszczyk role as well. Not as good as Juszczyk, but he can play that in the backfield. So I think they like having him around just in case if Juszczyk were to ever get hurt, he can fill in there. Charlie Werner, I really hope that he can start developing more as a receiver. Decent blocker. So hopefully he can get a little bit better this year with more time. And then Tyler Kroft, I think it's good to have like a veteran guy who's been around the block. He's had some decent years in the past. So I think one of these guys will be inactive on game day, but I think it's a decent group for the tight ends, but the wide receivers are really good.
Yeah. I want to take this moment to read this comment. I know some people in our fan base said Jauan Jennings was going to be cut. Good things. They were wrong. Yeah, so I never heard that. Now, one of the things that I was listening is that in the Vikings game, Jauan Jennings had probably his worst game, his worst outing in that game. He was dropping a lot of passes, running the routes the wrong way, etc. And Danny Gray has been playing really, really well. And one of the things that I said after that game, don't be surprised if Danny Gray moves up in the depth chart. Right now, again, let's see what he does in the first 4 weeks of the season. If Danny Gray is outperforming Jauan Jennings will fall down. And I was looking at all these beat writers and all these, podcasters, and they were setting up the PowerPoints, the different, formations and all that stuff, and then the depth chart. Debo is wide receiver number 1. Brandon Ayuk is number 2. The backup to Debo, most people thought would be Jauan Jennings. No, it looks like his backup is Danny Gray. So basically, if you go by the position numbers, if he's the third guy, did Jauan Jennings go down to number 4? Again, these are just little speculations at the moment. I still think Jauan Jennings is the number 3 receiver, but if Danny Gray has done way more than Jauan Jennings, I won't be surprised if he moved up the depth chart before week 1. So that's one thing I wanted to say about that. I want to say what's up to my boy Fialua60, who's always in the building. Aloha, everyone. Shout out to my boy Fialua60, who's in the building. So I was surprised with the wide receiver room. Only 5 wide receivers. Kyle's always had 6 wide receivers. So I don't know what happened this year. Maybe he thought the wide receiver room was just too stacked. Maybe Ray McCloud is way better than we saw him. Danny Gray, of course, I'm on a vouch for he was outstanding. Jauan Jennings. So those are some 3 good backups, quality backups. And, of course, we got Ayuk and Debo. For the first time, the 49ers have depth at the wide receiver, not like 2 young guys and a bunch of veterans from other teams that we brought in. No, we got 2 young star quality receivers, and we got a lot of great young depth at that position. Of course, if anything happens, we got Malik Turner. Don't know why we have Willie Snead on the practice squad, but even with Malik Turner, that is a lot of depth at the wide receiver. So that's my thoughts about that. When I look at the tight end situation, in my opinion, I think they're worried about George Kittle. I think they want to give him as much time to rest and not overwork him. And that's why Charlie Warner will be probably the guy when George Kittle is catching. He will be that blocking tight end. Or if they're looking for 2 tight end receivers, Ross Dwelley. And Ross Dwelley may not get all the catches, but they don't really run a lot of double tight end, passing sets. So that's really good. And Tyler Kroft, maybe they brought him in because we did let go of Josh Hawkins or Josh Hawkins, however it's pronounced. I don't know if we brought him back, but apparently I think I was told by the Cardinals that they cut him. So I think they brought Tyler Kroft as that switch army guy who can also line up in the backfield and also line up at the tight end. That's my thoughts why we brought him back. But when I look at the receivers and the tight end rooms, again, Trey Lance, and I've been saying this, look at the depth that he has in throwing the football. defenses should be more worried about all these pass catchers that we have, the tight end pass catchers, our run game, and you're seeing what this offense is going to be. Trey Lance in the first month is not going to be overwhelmed because he's going to have so much depth on the offense. So that's my thoughts on the wide receiver. Final thoughts on the tight ends before we move on to the next position.
Yeah, I think I think you covered all the points as well. That there's a reason why we're keeping all these guys, and I think that you're right too. That with George Kittle is that of course you always want to have like your best guys on the field, but maybe we do reel him back a little bit. So instead of wearing him down throughout the year, that he can stay healthy, and especially for when we get to the playoffs, we're going to need all of our guys out there. But as like this roster with the weapons is just loaded. Like you think about it. On like your average 49er play, you're going to have Debo, Ayuk, Kittle, Mitchell, and Juszczyk as like the weapons, and that's just great to see. So, and we have depth as well. So, yeah, really good group.
All right, so we got Fialua 60 says right now we have 3 legitimate number 3 wide receivers in Jennings,
Agreed.
Gray, and McLeod. True. All right, looks like the Rams back. The Rams fan is back. Let's see what he has to say. All right, is Kevin Atkins on the team? Let me double check. Kevin Atkins. No, he's not on it. All right, and then the other player, he says Marcus Johnson. Yeah, for sure, he's not on the roster. He's not. I knew he was gonna get cut. Even when we picked him up during for the free agency period, I knew he was gonna be gone. All right, Fialua or Soli 684 says Warner is more better blocking. Dolly is more of a receiving tight end. Yeah, and that's a good thing. Kyle finally has his double tight ends because again, I learned this last year. Kyle runs a 21 personnel offense, which is basically 1 wide receiver and 2 tight ends when it comes to running the football. But then when he does want to do passing, the 21 personnel can also exchange. You take away the fullback and you add another wide receiver. So then you do have to account on a blocking tight end, receiving tight end, and wide receivers. That's the reason why I want to see how this 21 personnel works with these extra blocking tight ends and this extra receiving tight end. So I agree with that. Just popped in the building. Sergeant Bubbly, also known as Bubbly Doggy. John J. Niners all damn day in the building. All right, now we're going to go to the offensive line room. Basically, they started with 9 offensive line players, and then they brought in an offensive guard from Cleveland. So let's talk about this offensive line room. What are your thoughts about it?
Well, yeah, if we go left to right, I mean, Trent Williams, the best left tackle in football. I don't think anyone could reasonably argue that. Left guard, Aaron Banks, he definitely has some things to prove. It's going to be his first time being a full-time starter, but I think he'll definitely grow into the position. And I think playing beside a guy like Trent Williams will really help him out. Jake Brendel, I think overall he was pretty good in the preseason, and he got some experience there, so that's good. And I think he's very mobile, which Shanahan always likes from his offensive linemen. So yeah, I think he'll be solid. And then we have Spencer Burford, the rookie, who's really came onto the scene. Now that last preseason game against Houston, he had 2 holding calls, so definitely needs to clean that up a little bit. But beyond that, I like the way that Burford plays, just like a mean streak. He likes to embarrass the defenders, kind of like Trent Williams. So you love to see that mentality from an offensive lineman. And then the right tackle, that's going to be interesting to look at. McGlinchey will probably be the starter if he's healthy. But if he's not, do we maybe go with Colton McKivitz, who's been, I think he does an admirable job at right tackle. And then Daniel Brunskill too. So Brunskill, which I like about him a lot, is that he can basically play any position on the offensive line. And I think that's really where his true value is that should someone go down, Brunskill might be the first guy to step in, regardless of the position. Then we have some other good players too. Blake Hance, who we brought in, who we claimed off of waivers from the Browns. The Browns fans, a lot of them were talking him up pretty highly. He started 10 games last year, looked decent. And John Lynch, I think, did say today that he can also, like Brunskill, essentially play all 5 positions. Nick Zaquel is someone who, the rookie, they have high hopes for. I thought a lot of people were hoping that we would keep Jason Poe on the 53-man roster instead of Zaquel, but clearly they like what they see in Zaquel. He might be the future center, so that's something to think about. And then Jalen Moore, who had a really rough game against the Texans. It was brutal. He was awful, but hopefully he can rebound from that. Look, he's a young player. I don't think that left tackle is his natural position, so he was maybe put in a difficult spot. But yeah, I think if we can get healthy at right tackle, then this is a solid offensive line. Not great, besides for Trent Williams.
Yeah, like the only thing I can say about the offensive line is that Mike McGlinchey may not be like Trent Williams, Pro Bowl status, but he has been with the team for already, I think now this is going to be his 5th season, I think. So, So he understands, he understands how to play, the tackle position. Good run blocker. If he really steps up this year on his pass blocking game, that side of the ball, the weak side, because the left tackle is basically the left tackle is the weak side. He has the strong side, so he has the more easier side because the quarterback is still able to look at that direction. But Trent Williams protects that weak side very well. But if during the pass game, if Mike McGlinchey can step up, I'm not worried about that. Both their tackles, I'm confident on. The center is going to be the big one. Brunskill and Brendo are going to be taking a lot of time working together to see who is going to be the everyday down. I think in the first couple of games, I think they're going to be doing a lot of switching out, see who's going to be that guy. If Brendo plays really well, then it looks like Brendo, but they do have a safety net in Brunskill. Aaron Banks and Spencer Burford are technically rookies, even though one has been on the team for a year. Aaron Banks is making his debut. This is his first week 1 matchup. He's going against a Bears defense, and let's see how he matches up. If what I do know about the Bears, they have a lot of developing players on that line. So we'll see how he works out, but he's right next to Trent Williams. Trent Williams is a good mentor. And of course, Burford has done so well since he's been with the 49ers. Has made some issues during the preseason, showing his rookie status in the 49ers. Then I look at Colton McKivitz, Jalen Moore, Nick, whatever. I don't know how to pronounce that. Nick Zaquel or whatever. I'm sorry if I'm butchering his name. Let's see. Who else do we have? We got Blake Hance. I don't know if that's the correct pronunciation. We brought him in. So when I see the depth does have a bit of question marks for me. But if this offensive line exceeds expectation, I think this is going to be the reason why the Niners are going to roll with the punches, and they're going to basically run the table. That's my thoughts on the offensive line. Any other thoughts on the offensive line before we move finally to the defensive side of the ball?
I think at some point we might see Jason Poe come up to the active roster. I also think with the offensive line now, of course, I hope that everyone stays healthy. They can really gel and get that chemistry going. But I wouldn't be surprised if throughout the year that, sorry for the sirens in the background if you hear that, but I wouldn't be surprised if maybe at some point in the first few weeks, if the offensive line is struggling, that we might try and swing a trade for someone. Because with Jimmy restructuring his deal, we now have a good amount of cap space. So that could be something to look out for as well.
All right. Now we're going to bring back the active roster again. And so now we basically went through the offensive side. Now we're going to go to the defensive side. We're going to look at the defensive line, the linebackers, and the defensive back. We're going to skip over the special teams because Robbie Gould, he kicks the ball. Taylor Pepper, the long snapper, and Mitch Wisnowski, they don't have no backup, so we don't have to worry about them. But those are the special teams players. But when I look at the defensive line, I was shocked that we kept 6 defensive ends and only 3 defensive tackles, 9. The last several years, we've kept a lot of defensive line players. So I don't know what this means. Are the Niners saying that the defensive line is healthy enough that we don't have to stack the defensive line? And are they also good? So that's the big question. Of course, Eric Armstead, Nick Bosa, Samson Ebukam, and Javon Kinlaw are the starters. And of course, that is the rest of the defensive line. On the linebackers, I was shocked. At first, we had 6, but Curtis Robinson was moved from active to injured reserve. I didn't know he got hurt. So that's something. So we have, like I said, 5 linebackers, like I called it. And 2 of them, Oren Burks and Flanagan Foles, are good pieces to have because they may be backups. But say we do lose Aziz or Drake, because those are 2 guys who are going to be free agents next year. We have good depth. And one of them could step up and make a case that, hey, the linebackers, again, I don't want to lose any of our linebackers, but we have good depth there. And, of course, the defensive backs, of course, Ufunga, Lenore. We also are bringing back veteran after a year with an Achilles injury. Tarvarius Smart had probably his worst camp, but again, he's coming off an injury. Maybe that's the case. Manuel Mosley, George Odom, look, is a stud. This guy is a steal from the Indianapolis Colts. They told me, and they keep texting me and messaging me on my Instagram, dude, why did we let him go? So they're not happy. So this guy is a big steal. Ambry Thomas, of course, Samuel Womack, we drafted him, and of course, the big veteran that we signed, Charvarius Ward. So that is the secondary. And now we're going to go do what we did and go through position by position. And now we're going to start off with the defensive line. Now, as it's just me and him again, as we remove that, what are your thoughts on the defensive line?
I think my thoughts kind of correlate with Bubbly Doge in the comments that I think we have a lot of guys who can play both positions, which is really good. But I mean, this defensive line is probably arguably the best, like most talented and the deepest in the entire NFL. Like if you look at the starting defensive line, Bosa, I think even though people around the NFL, like everyone knows about him, I still think in a weird way he's a little bit underrated with just how good he is. Eric Armstead is a stud. I think he's going to be playing a lot more on the inside where he can just destroy guards and centers. Javon Kinlaw, we're all hoping for a big year. I know he has a little bit of added motivation to prove Grant Cohn wrong. And then Samson Ebukam as the other starter. And I think he's going to have a big year. We saw what he was doing even preseason week 3 against the Texans and the end of last year. He's my guy this year on the defensive line where I think I wouldn't be surprised if he goes for like 10, 11 sacks. So then you look at the depth. Kerry Hyder, he can also play outside, play a little bit of inside. He had a great year with us in 2020. He really takes to Chris Kaceric's coaching very well. Rookie Drake Jackson, he's a guy who like looked really good in the preseason, could potentially fill that D Ford role that we need on the defense, and great depth, across the line. You talk about Kevin Givens, Hassan Ridgeway, who can play inside, and they're very solid players. Jordan Willis we brought back too. Just the names keep coming and coming, and mentioned a little bit earlier, but when we talked about the practice squad, but could Komoko Turay get onto the roster as well? So there's just talent and depth from top to bottom. It's going to be hard for any offense to slow this group down.
All right, yeah, and basically, like you already took the words out of my mouth already, but I'm still going to give you my thoughts about it, and it's very simple. Like Nick Bosa and Samson Ebukam. Nick Bosa, one thing I want to say about Nick Bosa, he's really underrated. Now, I do not want to talk about this because I want to try to keep it football related. But when Nick Bosa was drafted, apparently the media found out that he had some views that for those who live here in the Bay Area, they don't really have the same views of Nick Bosa. Now, I'm not going to go in particular about that because this is a football channel. I don't talk about that stuff. So maybe he is penalized a little bit for that. And again, I judge a football player from the merits on the field. Every football player has their own beliefs, their own system, and maybe that's why last year he got robbed, or maybe the defensive player was just so stacked. And at the end of the day, I wanted to say that for the moment. Now, back to the football situation. Samson Ebukam, if he has a better year, last year, took him a while to understand the system. He was a former linebacker converted to an edge rusher. So maybe after the 49ers figure it out, maybe he will step up because, again, he's still the number 2 guy, the other side. Of course, you talked about this offseason, Javon Kinlaw, and everyone's favorite 49ers. Let's say he is everyone's favorite 49ers content. We have to give him his props, Mr. Grant Cohen. They had their little feud. It really stirred up the internet. It stirred up all the media markets. But I will say this about that. Besides that stuff, Javon Kinlaw still, in my eyes, still has a lot to prove to me. And at the end of the day, if he is as advertised, if he's one of the best run stoppers, and the running backs are going to have a problem versus him this entire year, I'm not going to be worried about him. But he has to prove it to me. And of course, Eric Armstead, every time he's in the middle, he plays way better than an edge rusher. I don't think he was ever meant to be an edge rusher, but I think when he plays in the middle, he's very outstanding. And you look at the depth, Charles Omenihu, who I've been saying, he's going to be a big, like last year, Arden Key. This guy is going to be probably the Arden Key. I could be wrong, but I want to state that. Drake Jackson, we talked about it. Of course, Kevin Givens, Hassan Ridgeway, those guys. The depth is there. I like the defensive line, and it's going to make the secondary really, really good. So that's my thoughts about the defensive line. Any other thoughts before we move on?
Yeah, when I was going through the line, I completely forgot about Charles Omenihu, who's another guy who can play inside, play outside, who could be in for a big year as well. He made some plays against Houston too. So yeah, man, this line is awesome. All game long, opposing offensive lines and quarterbacks are just going to be like terrified for what we can bring them.
Yep, that is 100% true. All right, let's look at some of the comments. And Sergeant Bubbly, forgot to read this. My bad. I think the OG or offensive guard that they brought in could fill a big Mike role. Did you see the clip he handled Joey Bosa? I did not see that clip, but thanks very much for that comment. They have played that. They have players that can. Let me slow down. They have players that can play both. All right, true. All right, and then Sergeant Bubbly also said Bosa's getting his 20 pieces this year, potentially record breaking with the extra game. Yeah, one of the things I've said with that extra game, for whatever the reason, we're going to see a lot of records start to be broken. But again, I still think the threshold, if you can break the record in 16 games versus 17, I think that's going to be the threshold because, again, you're giving players an extra game to break the records. That's why I want to say this to my boy Rudy, if he is listening to my boy Rudy. Cooper Kupp played an additional playoff game and an additional game. So he played 17 games. He played 21 games. 21 games. That is more than anybody else. And if you still think that he's better than Jerry Rice, I'm sorry, Rudy, you are wrong. But at the end of the day, Cooper Kupp's numbers have been inflated with those extra games. But that's my thoughts about that. All right, we got Albuquerque Turkey in the building. What is up, man? He says, hi, John Jay. And he also says, Jolt Soda for your co-host, John Jay. Don't know what that is, but it must be something good. Jolt Soda. I see the word soda, so I'm just going to assume it's, soda. I do love soda. All right.
Love soda.
Let's move on to the linebacker rooms. And basically, very simple for me. I like the linebackers. But what are your thoughts about the linebackers?
Oh, same. I love it. I think it's maybe the best linebacking room in the entire NFL when you look at talent and depth. Fred Warner. I actually thought he had a bit of a down year last year, but overall, he's still maybe a top 2, top 3 linebacker in the NFL. Dre Greenlaw, I really, really like Dre Greenlaw. I think he complements Fred Warner really, really well. We saw last year Azeez Al-Shire stepped in and he did a great job, really held it down and played honestly about just as well, if not even better than Fred Warner last year. And then we mentioned earlier Oren Burks that we signed, special teams ace, but also I thought he was really, really active in the preseason games. He was just everywhere. And then Demetrius Flanagan-Foles, he's a guy who's been with the team for a couple years and a pretty solid depth as well. I wouldn't, if one of our guys gets hurt, I'd be absolutely okay with either Oren Burks or DFF coming in because, I think they're really talented guys, but I really do look for an almost like challenge Fred Warner to maybe just be a little bit better in the regular season, maybe force a couple more turnovers because I thought that's where he was lacking a little bit. But overall, I think it is probably the best linebacking room in the NFL. So this defense is just absolutely stacked. It's awesome.
Yeah. I just want to point out something about the linebacker core. Fred Warner is the highest linebacker that John Lynch, Kyle Shanahan. Basically, Fred Warner was a third-round selection. There's a reason why he's called All-Pro Fred. This guy was supposed to be a safety, not a safety, a special teams player because we had Reuben Foster. Apparently, Reuben Foster, Niners just say, you know what, forget it. They're not looking for no players with any baggage. So this guy was a third rounder. He's an all-pro, making it the big money. There's a reason why he's called All-Pro Fred. Trey Greenlaw, 5th round selection. This guy was a stud. And for whatever the reason, this guy was a higher ranked player, and he fell to the 49ers in the 5th round. This guy in his rookie season had a good rookie season. Last season, was injured, to say the least. And then Demetrius Flanagan-Foles and Azeez Al-Shire or Al-Shire, I don't know what's the correct pronunciation, but these guys were undrafted, and these guys have stepped up and become quality starters. And Oren Burks was not drafted by us, but this guy was, I think, a third-round selection by the Packers. So when you look at the linebackers, we are really good at drafting linebackers. And this is a real reason why DeMeco Ryans started off as a linebacker coach, and now he's into his second season as a defensive coordinator. And people are saying that he's probably going to be one of the top 3 candidates and coaching for the next season. And hopefully, if our defense is really good, it's going to be a bittersweet because that means our defense is going to be destroying the offenses and stopping the run, stopping the receivers. But it's also bittersweet because teams are going to be like, we need to talk to DeMeco Ryans. So I'm a little bit worried about that. But again, the Niners defense has built a great culture. The defense has never been the problem. It's been the offense. We've never found that inconsistency. But now, hopefully, we finally found the right inconsistency with the quarterbacks, hopefully the offensive line, and the great receivers, running backs, etc. With that. So I don't really need to say anything about the linebackers. But before we move on, any final words on the linebackers?
I think you make a good point about DeMeco, and I think that's really going to help the defense overall too. He's going into his second year as the defensive coordinator, so I think he would have learned a lot, from the first time around. I mean, if you think about it, when you look at the regular season and the playoffs, he coached 20 games last year, and that doesn't include preseason games. So he has a lot of experience now. So I think he'll be even better this year, learning from any mistakes that he maybe made in his first year. But I'd be shocked if he is back with us next year because I would put my money on him getting a head coaching job after this year.
Yeah, crazy Jews right there. Best comment. Definitely the best linebacker core in the NFL. All right, we got David Villa, making sure like a V and a Ya. Gotta say that correctly. David Villa in the building. What is up, man? How are you doing? What's up, faithful? John J. Glad to be here. Go Niners. Yeah, of course. Of course. And no disrespect to the other NFL teams. Niners are the best teams for is the best team for a reason. But what we're finally going to go back to those gold standard days. It's like those gold helmets. We're going to be really good again. Trust me. Okay, trust me. We've had 2 decades of bad success, but hopefully we're finally going to be successful again, and for a long time. For a long time. All right, let's talk about the cornerbacks, the safety room, the defensive back. There's a lot to say about this because again, and of course, there's one thing that happened, and I'm going to touch on it. Tyree Castro-Fields was cut, and he was picked up by the Washington Commanders. I will give you my thoughts about that. And in the safety room, it's got really better. Of course, we know Jimmy Ward is on the IR for at least 4 weeks. We'll probably be back in week 5. So, what are your thoughts on the secondary room, the corners, the safeties, the defensive backs?
Yeah, I think it's definitely improved over last year, and I really, really hope that these guys can stay healthy. When I mean these guys, especially Charvarius Ward and Emmanuel Mosley, because on the outside, we heard all the reports during training camp, just they were locking, Ayuk down, they were locking Debo down when he got back after he signed his deal. So this is going to be a great, great cornerback room. Sammy Womack, we just saw him be a revelation really in preseason, and I think he'll continue that. He's just the way he plays the position is textbook, so you gotta love that. And then Lenore and Ambry Thomas, they're now into their second year. I'm a little bit surprised that we didn't keep an extra cornerback, only 5 guys, but hey, after week 4, Jason Verrett, I'm really hoping he's healthy, because if we can get anything from Jason Verrett, man, that guy is Pro Bowl caliber when he's out there and when he's healthy. So that would be awesome. Then you move on to the safeties. I'm kind of surprised by this too. We only have 3 guys right now because, as you mentioned, Jimmy Ward is on the IR, so he'll miss the first 4 games as well. So Hufanga, Odom, and Moore. I think we're probably could pencil in that Hufanga and probably Odom will be the starters in those games. But yeah, I really look to see maybe we bring up Taylor Hawkins or Tashawn Gibson from the practice squad. But rolling with only 3 safeties and 5 cornerbacks, that's pretty low in terms of just the amount of players that we have on the active roster. I think it's a talented group. I think Hufanga could have a big time year. You mentioned Odom as well. I think he's a good player. And then Moore, hopefully he can bounce back after that big time injury. So, but yeah, I just expect us to maybe to add another player or 2 to this defensive back room, just because the numbers are a little bit on the lower side.
Yeah. One of the things that you talked about, Talanoa Hufanga, Tarvarius Moore, and George Odom. Right now, there's 3 players in the active roster, but I do think for the temporary for the first part of the year, they're probably going to activate Tayshawn Gibson for a veteran guy. He's been in the league for a decade. He's been a Pro Bowler, I think, twice. Had his best year in the 2018 season. So it really shows you that this guy basically is a good safety. Not the best safety, but a really good safety. So I think that's what they're going to do. So I look at this safety room with some good players. A young, up-and-coming Talanoa Hufanga could be the face in the next couple of years of that safety room. Jimmy Ward, of course, he's hurt. Going to be missing some time. Hopefully, when he does come back, he's still the Jimmy Ward that we all know him. George Odom, we're going to see him against the top-tier quarterbacks, when the ball is thrown in this area, against the top-tier receivers where he has to defend the deep stuff. So he's going to get his test, and hopefully we'll see how he does. But I'm not worried about him. I think he's going to have an easy transition. Also, when I look at Tarvarius Moore, that's the question mark for me. Again, is that Achilles still, giving him some trouble? Has he digressed? That's gonna be the problem. So the safety room right now is a little bit under depth, but hopefully during the season we don't have to find out using all the depth that we have. Also, the practice squad, we also have Taylor Hawkins as a safety. So in case anything happens, we do have another safety, but hopefully we don't want no injuries. Then I look at Diamador Lenore and Ambry Thomas. These guys have fallen in the depth chart because Samuel Womack is the number 3 guy. Looks like we're going to have a nickel set and a rookie will start. And Samuel Womack has done really, really well. Now he'll be going against the top competition. He's a good nickel corner. And of course, Charvarius Ward has a lot of expectations. He's supposed to do what he did in Kansas City. So that's one thing. Hopefully the skills do transition. And of course, Emmanuel Mosley is going to have a lot of expectations because, again, he's been very successful. Every time he does well, he does regress from time to time, but he's going to have a lot of expectations. So when I look at the safety in the secondary room, it's better than last year, way better than last year, and the depth is there. Now, I wanted to talk about Tyree Castro-Fields. Apparently, he wasn't doing so well, and he didn't really stand out, and he was released. I do like him as a prospect. He got signed off waivers by the Washington Commanders. So we'll see how he does over there, and hopefully he does not turn out to be a stud over there. I hope he does not become a stud over there because then that will make me very furious. So Tyree Castro-Fields and JaMychal Hasty, 2 players that I did not want to get cut or picked up by other teams, but this is the NFL. You cannot be attached to these players, but I like those players. I'm not going to lie. All right, I'm going to go to the comments quickly. We got some comments that just popped in. All right, we got CarCast in the building. What is up, man? Our boy CarCast in the building. And, of course, what's up, faithful? Shout out to CarCast. If you're not subscribed to his channel, you're doing yourself a disservice. This kid knows what he's talking about. So I'm going to give you the final word of the safeties and corners before we move on.
Yeah, I think after week 4, so week 5 when we play, I think it's at Carolina, we might have the best, arguably one of the best secondary rooms as well, because we could be getting back, we should be getting back Jimmy Ward, but possibly Jason Verrett too, on top of all these other guys that we're talking about here. So, like, I think the defense, if this defense doesn't finish in the top 3, at least the top 5, I'd be absolutely stunned because we're just loaded top to bottom, just talent, depth, everything, coaching. It's really excited to see what it does. And compared to last year too, because the secondary was a mess. Josh Norman, he was trash. Outside of, forcing some fumbles, he was trash. I didn't like him at all. Drake Kirkpatrick, he was awful as well. And we were just putting guys in and out all year long. So, but yeah, I think it's going to be much improved this year. So I'm really excited about it.
Yeah. Looks like someone who you met for the first time, Mr. YTC. He's a New York Giants fan. He says, "Sup, John Jay and Shifty, great hanging out." Shout out to Corey Davis. I want to say Corey Davis brought us all together. We had Bryant. Let's see who else. We had Brian. Of course, we had our boy David, who was also there, and of course, the Giants fan. I wanted to let the fans know Corey Davis had surgery. He's been dealing with a lot of pain. So let's wish our boy Corey Davis a quick, speedy recovery. Also, been dealing with a lot of health issues. So to Corey Davis, who's usually here in the chat, I just wanted to say to our boy Corey Davis, if you're watching or if you watch this later, just remember, you will always be part of this family, the 49ers Ultimate Report, and you are also considered my brother because we come together because of the 49ers. So we're all Niner brothers and Niner sisters. Let's not forget about the ladies because, we do have a lot of 49er ladies who love of course, the 49ers. So shout out. But yes, he was on there. And
yeah, shout out to Corey Davis.
Yeah, Corey Davis. Shout out to Ramon and Emily Jones. Long time no see. But every time they pop in here, it's always great to see Ramon and Emily Jones in the building. They don't always pop in the building, but I know who my followers are. I never forget who they are. How are you doing? He says, "Hey, John Jay, love your channel, even when I can't catch you live. Blessings to you, brother." Thank you very much for the kind words. Those are some very kind words. Yep. YTC says, for my respects and prayers for Corey Davis. Yep. Shout out to Corey the Great Davis. All right. So let's thank, of course, the co-host of this show, also a great guest on as we are doing this wonderful podcast. Last week, we did it on Thursday. Shifty was able to hop on today and talk about the 53-man roster. Of course, we're not always going to do this on Thursdays. Of course, our boy Shifty has a channel to run, and he's also a very busy man. But we're going to have this podcast once a week for the entire season. And I cannot wait for the season to start because we're going to see more and more of Shifty. And, of course, we have some few other fans of the Niners and podcasters who will be having a weekly series on the channel. So you guys should have a great, great second year. My second year on YouTube, the second season of the regular season, we're going to have podcasts. So as this channel grows, great stuff is going to happen on this great channel. But because we were unable to do this in the start of the show, Shifty, let the fans know who you are, what you do. Talk about your channel, your social media platforms, and talk about who you are. Plug in your social media stuff as well. This is your 2 minutes of Shifty. Thanks, everyone, for supporting our show. But, Shifty, let the fans know who you are.
Yo, yeah, Shifty 49ers talk here. Similar to John Jay, I born in San Francisco and I live in San Francisco. I just love all things 49ers and just Bay Area sports. You can see all the stuff I have back here. But yeah, I'd make content. I try to put out whenever there's any breaking news. I'll do videos on my opinions, whether it's on the roster or the draft or whatever moves we make. I like to preview and review the games during the regular season. And then I also, my favorite thing to do, or one of my favorite things to do at least, is I live stream the games. So you get like my reactions as the plays happen, which is always a lot of fun, leads to some crazy moments, especially towards the end of last year. But also this is going to be my second year where I'll be making content for the 49ers as well. So I started about almost midway through last year. But I love doing what I do. It's a lot of fun. And Shifty's 49ers talk on YouTube, Instagram, and Twitter. That's where you will find me.
All right. Carcass says, yeah, prayers for Corey Davis. Yes. And Crazy Juice also says, I sent all my prayers to Corey Davis. Yep. Look at that. Someone subscribe to your channels. There you go. See, it's about the community. A lot of people
appreciate that.
About that community. So it's always wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. But with that said, everybody, this is the 49ers Ultimate Report. I'm John Jay. This is Shifty. Subscribe to this channel if you're not subscribed yet. But with that said, I'm John Jay. This is the 49ers Ultimate Report. And of course, it's like I said, there's some cool new ending to the show. So you don't ever have to say, peace out. So you guys have a good rest of your day. Go Niners.